What you're looking at right now is the oldest trace of Japanese animation or anime that has been dated back to 1907. The tape was discovered in 2004 and released as Katsudo Shashin, and even though it is classified as an anime, it only rolls for a whopping 50 frames or 3 seconds. The clip depicts a young boy in a sailor's outfit drawing kanji in the back wall, and then tipping his hat towards the audience. Even though this video goes for a very short amount of time, it sparked something that had yet to come. Most of the animation that came from Japan during the World War II period were propaganda and educational videos that were approved by the Japanese government. Momotaro no Umiwashi is a very good example of what animation styles back then were like. Black and white, slow and basic movement, undetailed backgrounds, recycled frames. These were very simple but effective uses of these resources. Osamu Tezuka, often known as the godfather of anime, created Mushi Productions, one of the few Japanese animation companies at the time, in 1961, and went on to create some of the most famous and influential anime of the decade, starting with the well-known Astro Boy. Tezuka was inspired by Walt Disney's works, and can be compared as the Walt Disney of anime himself. TV anime was something that had never been attempted before, because to create a hit TV show, you need to be pumping out at least 30-minute episodes each week, and not to mention costs and technology limitations. Mushi Productions' resourceful use of an animation with simple design and character movements allowed the show to have a low budget, as well as still maintaining the themes that Tezuka originally planned for the series. It's also worth mentioning the influence that Astro Boy had on the anime industry at the time. This was something that no one had ever seen before, from the themes, art style, resourcefulness, characters and character design, and plot of the show. In 1965, something revolutionary happened: the introduction of color in animation. Kimba the White Lion was aired on July the 31st, and was the first color anime. Emotions and themes could now be experienced through colored backgrounds and characters. Subgenres of anime started to appear in the form of Sally the Witch, which was the first magical girl anime, as well as the anime adaptation for Princess Knight, which was one of the first shoujo animes, or a genre of Japanese comics and animated films aimed primarily at a young female audience. One of the most successful anime of the early 1970s was Ashita no Joe, or Tomorrow's Joe, directed by Osamu Dezaki. Desaki's animation style was a huge step up in quality from the previous decade, with the character designs and expressions loaded with huge amounts of detail. The show also sprinkled a little bit of cinematography into the mix, with many action and fight scenes. Lupin the Third was also very popular early into the decade, and was aimed at an older audience, as most of the 1960s show were made for children. This shift in audience also affected the animation style, which was more darker and explored darker themes. The rise of television meant that the anime film industries were losing money and were struggling to find ways to earn cash. Go Nagai, one of Japan's most famous manga creators, had a revolutionary idea of the mecha, which was a giant robot that people can control like a car. This concept of mechas was a big hit, and made anime and manga very successful. From that point on, anime pushed the limits and started to introduce the genre mecha, and finally brought these giant robots to life with colors. The first mecha anime was Mazinger Z, made by Go Nagai. Mazinger Z was a huge inspiration to the mecha genre, and inspired many other animes, including the very popular Mobile Suit Gundam. Because of the influence of the mecha genre, it inspired anime such as Mobile Suit Gundam, which set the standards for mecha anime for the next decade. The mecha genre was unique to anime, so much so that production companies started hiring studios for mechanical design. Despite its time and technological limitations, the mech's design and animation were amazing. The popularity of 1977's Star Wars shifted the anime genre to space operas and brought series such as Space Battleship Yamato, which actually came out in the 70s but don't tell anyone, and Science Ninja Team Gatchaman into the light. Inspired by the mecha genre from the 1970s, these anime became very popular not only in Japan but worldwide, earning themselves dubs in many different languages and millions in revenue. Mobile Suit Gundam was also reworked into Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam, which is the most successful real robot space opera in Japan, where it managed an average television rating of 6.6% and a peak of 11.7%. 1985 was also when Studio Ghibli was formed, who later went on to create a number of classic anime films. A year later, after Studio Ghibli's formation, they created the first official anime film, Laputa: Castle in the Sky, which brought many new animation techniques and styles. The movement and animation in this film was smooth and realistic, and the backgrounds were layered with detail, a huge improvement from the 1960s anime, having almost static or gradient backgrounds. The extremely popular anime Dragon Ball also brought the martial arts genre to anime and inspired later works such as One Piece and Naruto. The anime industry definitely hit its peak in the 80s, and due to an unfortunate economy crash at the end of the decade, many production companies closed down, which affected the next decade greatly. The start of the decade saw the aftermath of Akira, which was the anime to bridge the mecha genre to the post-apocalyptic and cyberpunk genre, as well as making anime more mainstream in America. Akira also inspired other anime to use the same genre and a more gritty/realistic animating style because of the older target audience, which you can see in anime like Ghost in the Shell, where realism is the main focus of the film. Technology also started to improve, and because of this new approach of animating, the anime industry was revived. Anime of the 1990s also had an influence on Western media, with The Matrix being inspired by Ghost in the Shell and other popular cyberpunk anime, making anime even more popular in the West. The popular and controversial series, Neon Genesis Evangelion, helped Ghost in the Shell revive the declining anime industry. The series was a combination of the mecha genre, as well as exploring darker themes and broken characters. It also used a realistic art style from Akira and Ghost in the Shell. In the year 1997, Studio Ghibli released their most expensive anime film yet, Princess Mononoke, with a cost of a whopping $20 million to produce. The film was extremely successful at the box office and was critically acclaimed, which inspired many animated creators to push the boundaries of anime and original styles. Cowboy Bebop aired in 1998, and while at first being cancelled in Japan, was aired later in America on Adult Swim in 2001 and saw a mass amount of popularity in the West. The show continued to air until 2013 and boosted the popularity of anime in the West. Anime of the late 90s was a time for experimental shows that combined all styles of anime from the previous decades, as well as forming new ones. It's interesting to think that the current standards and anime art styles all came from the influence of the classic anime series, and to see how far we've come from the original anime in the 60s, and now that digital animation is becoming more and more popular, more anime creators are experimenting more and taking bigger risks in their art, with each artist or series having their own artistic style that vary from anime to anime. Nowadays, there is no set standard for how big your anime character's eyes are, or what colours you use to express emotion. The industry has gotten more creative each decade, and will only continue to do so in the many years to come.